Hello, and welcome to the Bamboo Lab podcast with your host, peak performance coach, Brian Bosley. Are you stuck on the hamster wheel of life, spinning and spinning, but not really moving forward? Are you ready to jump off and soar? Are you finally ready to sculpt your life? If so, you've landed in the right place. This podcast is created and broadcast just for you. All of you strivers, thrivers, and survivors out there. If you'd like to learn more about Brian and the Bamboo Lab, feel free to reach out to explore your true peak level at www.bamboolab3.com.
Welcome back, Bamboo Lab listeners. This is Dave Dick, a blast from the past, and I get the honor of interviewing our wonderful host, Brian Bosley, for the 150th episode. So I'm pretty excited about today's episode. One, because Brian, I haven't scared you off and you're letting me come back and do this with you. But the other reason is you and I have been brainstorming on the proverbial next steps. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today. But to just kind of get us started today, Brian, I just want to get everybody up to date on you, what you've been up to, get a check-in, see how things are going. So, Brian, welcome to the Bamboo Lab.
Thanks, buddy. I have to give you an opportunity to come on here. I think this is your fourth time on.
I don't know. I don't know, buddy. I make guest appearances. I'm kind of in the shadows all the time.
Well, like I always say, you are the pod.
I appreciate you bringing me on, though.
You're the pod fodder of the BLP because this was all your brainchild almost 4 years ago. So I can't say no to you.
I appreciate that, Brian. You're making me blush a little bit. I wanted to get us kicked off today. Really, just kind of get caught up on Brian. I mean, it's been a while since you've been the focus of your own podcast. I know that you drop in and give thoughts here and there, and you sprinkle a little bit of your leadership and mentorship throughout. But I didn't just make you the focus of Brian and what's been going on for you. So. Sounds like you've gotten your format down quite a bit for the podcast. Just kind of get started with what have you found that's worked in your podcast?
I mean, the questions themselves are, a lot of those were yours and mine brainchild as you helped me progress along and gave me some good questions to ask. And I think what's worked is the sequence of the questions. I think that the questions themselves are. Some are lighthearted, just to get to know the guest, and some of them go deep so they can really get to know the guest. And I think we kind of just fell upon a good format. And, you know this, Dave. I've been wanting to change this format and tweak with it. And then I started thinking, why? It's working. I'll make improvements as we go, but the format has worked really well. And I think the number one thing that has worked most is just the guests that I bring on. I'm just mesmerized by the generosity of people who will give their time for an hour and a half with us and share their wisdom and experience.
Yeah, I've noticed just listening to the various podcasts. I've noticed, and an accolade to you, I've noticed just the professionalism in your podcast where the early ones were. I say primitive, but you're roughing it out and figuring out what worked. And then I've noticed this recently that they're just crisp. The questions are crisp. The guests are very on point. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Really noticed a big jump on that. And I noticed that you took a break for a period of time. I don't know, it was about a year ago.
It was last fall. I think it was October, November, December. I think it was 2.5 months. Yeah.
What precipitated that? What was the reason for it?
That was probably the biggest learning I've had in the past 3.5 years of the show is when I got notice last, I'm going to say July, maybe August, that the show is now, the BLP was now in the top 10% of all podcast downloads and subscribers in the world. That hit me. And it was a really cool thing up front, right? I was like, oh, that's awesome. And I started to realize after that I was checking out I was looking at the numbers far too much, several times a day. Did we get a new city? Did we get a new country? How many more subscribers have we gotten? And I found after a few weeks of doing that became gross to me. That's the best way to describe it, Dave, is I felt gross. Because when we started this podcast 3.5 years ago, the intent was to share wisdom to other people, wisdom and hope around the world. And all of a sudden, that kind of took second row with me to the numbers. And I just felt kind of disgusted with it. And so I made an announcement that I was going to take some time off until I got my priorities straight. And I think it was 2.5 months. And then I had the privilege of interviewing Chuck Wackendorfer late December of last year. And we aired that one the first week of January. And I felt I got my mojo back. I got my head screwed back on straight.
So that's so good that you have enough awareness. I mean, what I hear you saying is that you had a focus which was altruistic, yet, it's designed in how do I make this a better place for myself and for other people. And then you got into that internet famous, so to speak, where now and I hear people talk about this on, TikToks or Reels. I have this many followers and I have this many, and you kind of got into that. It sounds like you kind of got into that world of thinking that way and you kind of got disconnected from the purpose. So my question to you is, many of us fall into that. We start to, what do they say? Drink our own Kool-Aid. We start to believe our own BS. We start to see ourselves through this lens. How do we pull ourselves out of that and get back to our purpose? It seems like you lived it.
Yeah, I think the best thing to do is to have friends and family who will call your bullshit. And I had that, a lot with you. You kept me grounded. My kids and my grandkids, my mom keep me grounded. I think that was it for me, that when I really looked at it, 99.9% of the planet doesn't give a shit. I don't know,
It's so true.
probably
So true.
99% of the planet's never heard my show. You look at the numbers and, there are still 180,000 podcasts in the world that were doing better than mine when mine was in the top 10%. And for me, it was also a time last summer where I kind of fell out of my own element personally too. I was living in a town where I really didn't have a good connection. I was traveling a lot and I was drinking a lot. I'm not a guy who drinks by himself. And I found myself a lot during the course of that time frame. It wasn't a time where I would say I went black, but I went dark. I went gray. And I was sitting at home. I was looking at these numbers and messing around with the podcast while I'm, drinking a gin and tonic or some beers. And the whole thing just made me feel kind of just gross and disgusted with myself. And so I decided I had to make some changes. So it wasn't just the change of the podcast. I just started making overall a lot of great personal adjustments and changes in my life. And I think that's what people notice now, that the podcast is more crisp, it's more consistent, because I'm in a different state of mind, in a different place and space than I was a year ago.
That's so good. You hit on a couple points there that I'm just going to highlight, Brian. One, you have, call them truth sayers. You have people that aren't selling out, buying into the BS, so to speak. You can step outside you that you trust. And I remember that period of time because you and I had a lot of conversations and you were throwing out, I don't feel connected. I'm losing my purpose. It doesn't make sense. And you and I had a lot of conversations, and I think it's true. It's not just me, and you have a world of people that are your truth tellers, right? That are willing to, call it out and say, hey, what's going on here? Or keep you grounded, not in a bad way, but just more in a realistic way. And so for your audience and for all of us out here in Bamboo Land, who in your world is holding you accountable, or are you allowed to just buy your own BS? And that's number one. Number two, and I as I go through my phases now and learn to readjust and be a better me, you connected physical, mental, and emotional together. So you looked at your physical world, you were in an emotional space and a physical space, and you connected all of that and said, hey, if I'm going to be a better version of Brian, I'm going to feel better about what I'm doing. I have to physically be better. I have to mentally be better. I have to emotionally be better, right? You challenge yourself there. But a lot of times, I know for myself, I get grounded, in working.
Yeah.
But you're saying, hey, hold on, you can't just do that because if it's going to shit, because it's going down a spiral, it starts with the physical, right? You got to put the physical body then leads into the mental and emotional. So I think that's really good. You identified that and can articulate that.
Yeah, it's very true. And I think one of the things that I have always had in my system is imposter syndrome, which weird because so many of my clients that I speak with have it too. I've had that since I was a young person so then when you get this level of the podcast itself becoming successful, that really reared its ugly head. And I felt uncomfortable with it. I felt out of place, out of sync. Like, who the hell do I think I am with this podcast? How dare I throw a podcast out there that's growing? And I had to really reel that, because I've dealt with imposter syndrome all of my life, but I've got it down to about 20% of where it was, say 10, 15, 20 years ago. But then it came back and I had to beat it back down again. But thankfully this time I was ready. I recognized it. And so I think they all kind of coalesced together. The success, my drinking, the imposter syndrome, that all kind of coalesced at the same time. And by working, like you said, start with the physical. I agree with that every time. Just start with the physical. Take care of your physical body. And I was still doing, I have a really weird morning routine, Dave, and most people that I know that I get up between 4:30 and 5. I spend about an hour and a half. I do the same ritual every single day. And that really kept me grounded. So even when during my darkest times, I still did that every day. So that kept me from falling too far behind. So I had that foundation there that was established, and I never dropped that. 6 days a week, I did the same thing every day for an hour and a half when I first get out of bed. And so that was kind of that really saved me. That was my life jacket. It didn't, I wasn't swimming real fast, but I wasn't sinking either. I was treading water, because I think that held me up.
Yeah. You have a friend, I believe in Colorado, Kevin, right? Gino. Yeah. Who is, it rings in my head that, consistency over performance wins, right? Like, so that's what you're leaning on, is like, I just had this habit, so I can just expand on that. It's got to be tough for somebody who doesn't have that, right? To then just wake up tomorrow and do a 2-mile run and 100 push-ups and 100 sit-ups. And you and I share something. The 8 plank, I do it 8 seconds, you do it 8 minutes, but who's counting the difference between those? It's it's about consistency.
I've only done 8 minutes one time. Don't trust me. That was a one-off. That was 3.5 years ago.
Well, awesome, because your podcasts now are great, and it's so good to see you come into your own, and you're doing phenomenally well with the podcast, and I couldn't wish any more and better stuff for you. And I'm happy to see it. What's been, as you think about the podcast, have you had any disappointments or challenges that you can think of?
I think just the one we just mentioned. I've thought about that question a lot. I think it was the arrogance. I think there was some, I definitely felt arrogant.
That's so good, Brian.
I did. And, it could overtake you. And I can't even imagine like what a Joe Rogan goes through, or Ed Milet, or somebody who, Theo Vaughn, who have presidents and vice presidents on their podcast. They have to really tap that down on a consistent basis. I mean, mine's obviously it's a top 10%, but it's still in that realm of top 10%. It's a mid-level player. The podcast is. And so, but I still noticed that it was creeping in. And so I'm glad the podcast has grown as it has, but I'm also glad that it didn't go from, it took 3.5 years to, at that time, I guess 2.5, 3 years to get there. And now, so it's kind of grown over the course of 3 or 4 years, at a nice steady pace. If it went from 0 to 60, I don't know how I would have handled it. So I had time to acclimate, but that was it. I think it was this kind of that gross feeling of arrogance and then feeling like I'm not worthy of this. But it was a good test, because, obviously I'm coaching my clients on that, on overcoming arrogance, overcoming imposter syndrome, how to deal with success. And I was able to understand and put myself in their shoes and go, oh, okay, I feel what they feel. And I'm able to coach them at a higher level now.
I think, Brian, just me, my 2 cents, I've suffered from imposter syndrome. I think I tend to believe that people who, the obstacles away theory, right? You go through, you start from humble beginnings, or you go through a difficulty and then you hit this different level. And it's kind of because of that, I think a lot of people share that. Like you said, a lot of your clients, I think a lot of people who get into success, I don't want to say successful people, but people who get successful or get into some success, look around and go, all these people are expecting me to do this, and I'm really not that good, because they realize like they're in the pattern of it, and we just get disconnected how hard it is to do what we did, right? And so your coaching helps people with that, and it's good you also took your own coaching, and that's great. And by the way, I use it as a motivator because I don't want anybody to find out how bad I am. So I just keep accelerating. So
that's one way to do it. Honestly, I don't have the exact data on this, but I do believe this to be true because I tell this to every one of my clients who brings up the fact that they have imposter syndrome. Well, first of all, we go through a process and we dissect, and they usually say, I have it. Then I say, well, let's dissect it to see whether or not you truly have imposter syndrome. And what I have found is about 70 to 75% of my client base over the past 29 years have it or did have it. When we started coaching. So it's very, very common.
Okay. So you said 79%?
70 to 75%.
Got it. And you have a process for that.
Yes.
So if people wanted to learn more about it, you could help them with this, right?
Yeah. Because you have to dissect. You have two fears. You have fear of failure or you have fear of success. And everybody has fear of failure. Every single human, because fear of failure is simply one of three other fears. Either fear of being embarrassed, fear of being rejected, or fear of losing something that you currently have. We all have that. Nobody wants to be embarrassed, rejected, or lose something. So we all have fear of failure, but fear of failure is so different because it's a simpler one to overcome, because if you're afraid of failure, let's just get past it and become successful. I'm afraid of bats and heights, so I don't put myself in a situation where I'm around a bunch of bats or I'm at a high platform. So, but what if you're trying to be successful in life, whatever that entails, but yet subconsciously you're afraid of success? So people, they immediately go to, I have imposter syndrome. Well, there are 9 other fears of success that you can have that aren't necessarily imposter syndrome. So we have to make sure that what's holding you back it is in fact imposter syndrome, or it might be one of the other 9 fears of success that are
that's
symptomatic.
Very good. That's very good. Because I always struggle personally with the fear of success versus fear of failure, trying to understand the difference between those two. So I know I struggle with that.
Yeah.
I'm sure most of the people you coach that probably get that a little confused too.
They do. And the thing is, what I find is people who are technically the most successful, whether it's professionally or financially, those are the people who almost always have fear of success, which is so strange. And it holds you back. You can be successful and still have it. But I always tell people, you got there despite your fear of success. Now, if we can eradicate that and minimize that anyway, can you imagine how much faster and further you'll grow? I
hate to ask this, but do you actually have a process that does that?
Yes, I do. It's called, I call it fear of success coaching. Just a simple little process. Wow. Yeah. And it's a matter of going through and dissecting, and we do have people do a self audit on those fears, and then we go back and dissect the ones that I always tell people. Tell me that when I go through these with you, and we coach the 10 fears of success. I want you to tell me which ones are definitely a fear you have, like it, and I rate them 1 to 10. That I want you to tell me the one that you think is a joke, like who would ever have that fear of success? And I tell them, because that's probably subconsciously one of your fears. If you think it's stupid that you might have this particular fear, that means you probably have it, and your comfort zone is trying to stop you from acknowledging it. So we dissect kind of but we, like I said, when we do it all, roughly 70 to 75% of my people, one of their primary fears of success is in fact imposter syndrome.
I believe that. I believe that to be true.
You feel like you're a fraud. The best way to explain it is you're in the success line of life, like at the grocery store, and you're always looking over your shoulder thinking someone's going to tap you and say, Mr. Bosley, I'm sorry, we made a mistake. We put you in the wrong line. You should be in the failure line over here. Can you come with me? That's what fear of success feels like all the time. You're just standing in the wrong line.
Or that like you're speaking or you're doing something, you're leading a group and you get this feeling like everybody else already knows that you're not good enough to be talking on this subject, or it's like you just have that impending doom. You do it anyways. You push through it, right? But I can completely relate to that. Since we're on the topic, Brian, most of what you've done for your professional career is coach people. I don't know. I think the Bamboo Lab club group shoots, mugs, whatever we call them. I think they know that maybe ancillary, but I don't think they really know that's really your gift to people. So I wanted to ask you a little bit about coaching, and to start off with, when should somebody decide to get a coach?
Well, I always think of it this way. It's a good question. Is start, stuck, success. So I think when a person is starting out in their career or in a new endeavor, whether it's writing a book or wanting to do a marathon or starting their career, starting a business, whatever it is, they need simple coaching. They need a foundation, a basis of success in performance coaching. It's typically in something like that it's a short term. It's a coaching relationship for maybe 6 months, sometimes up to a year. And sometimes those clients stay with me for, decades. So that's one time. But what also, when you already are on the path in your journey and you're on that, what I call the hero, Joseph Conrad called the hero's journey, and you're doing something, you're being successful, but you're not right quite at your peak yet, and you feel stuck. Like you're just stuck on the hamster wheel. You might have lost your motivation. You might have lost your discipline. You might have lost why you're doing this at whatever it is you're going after. You just kind of feel yuck. Now, I have felt that 3 or 4 times in my 29 years of coaching. I've gotten to that stage where I feel stuck. And when you just need that boost of somebody to say, let's go back to the beginning of why you did this. What have you learned in the past, 3 years, 10 years, however long you've been doing it. Now let's capitalize on bring your why back up to the forefront with all this wisdom and experience you've extraculated, whatever you've gotten over the last decade or so. And then now let's go to the next level. So that's like that hamster wheel mentality. You're just going, but you don't really know why or where you're going. And then the last one is when you are successful, you feel really good, but you just know there's more in there. There's a blockage in your system, in your mind, in your behavior, in your processes that cause you to say, I can't quite get to that next level, but I'm so close to it. So you're not starting out, you're not stuck on the hamster wheel. You're moving, but you just know there's more in you. My job is to go in there and pull that out of you. Help you do that shadow work. Get in the shadows, find out where the blockage is, what trap are you stuck in right now, and let's release that so you can go to the next level. So that's higher level coaching.
What do you think prevents people? Because I know most of your listeners, if they're anything like me, which I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you probably are. I believe in coaching. What prevents, in your opinion, what do you think prevents people from getting coaching or getting help like this?
I think a lot of it is, some of it is, people might not, they think if they ask for help that they are weak. And it's the opposite is true. If you don't ask for help, you become weaker. If you ask for help, you become stronger. So I think just that idea that why would I have to ask for someone? This seems like so many people are being successful. They're doing what I'm doing. They don't realize most of those people have asked for help. Or if not, everybody's asked for help. So I think there's that. I think as well as, there's the financial. People say, well, I can't afford it. Well, they don't even know what a coach costs. And, we have a system here where my goal is I just make it affordable for people. But I think the other side of it, I think this is very true, is people don't want to be sold. People want to buy. And, people think, well, if I get, my friend or somebody referred me to Brian, I should give him a call or shoot him an email or shoot him a text to talk to him. They think they're going to be sold. And that's when I tell everybody, if somebody says, hey, I have a person who wants to talk to you, I tell them before they call me, let them know I don't sell. I answer 3 questions. Number 1, would you benefit from coaching? Number 2, do I specialize and offer the exact type of coaching you need? And number 3, could we work together in a respectful, productive, synergistic relationship? If we answer the yes to all 3 of those questions, then we say, okay, now we get into the semantics of how we do it, how I can help them. And I tell them, take some time and think about it. Get back with me in 4 days. And that's it. It's pretty simple.
You're very approachable, almost it's a critique too approachable, meaning once you decide you can help somebody, I've seen you do this. You made this offer to me, and I've helped other people through this offer. Once you determine that A, they want coaching, B, you can help them, you just say, okay, what can you afford?
Yeah,
Like it's crazy because I've worked with other coaches, and it's a hard, like, this is it, all right, you're in or out. And but you're very flexible. So I see that as good and bad sometimes, right? Like, I see that as, because I know you, Brian, and I've kicked your butt over this a lot of times. I'm like, man, you've got to charge a ton more. And you and I have talked about that, but I don't want to get too hung up on that, because that's like a negative side. But it's also, I'm just sharing with your audience, like, don't feel like that's going to be the barrier.
Right.
To me, the barrier might be more of, do I want to be held accountable?
Yeah.
Do I actually, you tell that story about the boys with the hat, right? Like, you know, you want to tell it real quick, Brian? The wall.
Oh yeah. The Irish boys.
Yeah.
I actually think this was John F. Kennedy actually shared this story when he was, he was getting our country to support the moonshot. And he said, there's these two boys that live in this impoverished Irish village. And every day, the one little boy, his prized possession was a hat that he wore, like a derby, that his great-grandfather passed down to his grandpa, his dad. Now it's his. It's really the only thing he really owned. These kids were barefoot, and they would every day they would skip across the Irish hillside, and they would come across this massive stone wall, miles long and incredibly high. And they always knew intuitively that there was something much better for them on the other side of that wall. But every day they'd look at the wall and they'd kind of kick the ground and bow their heads and walk away disappointed and a little bit disgusted that they knew there was something better. And finally, on one of these days, they got to the wall. They skipped up there through the Irish grass and they got to the top of this mound, and there's this massive wall. And the one boy, who is obviously a much more efficacious young man, he stared at the wall, and right before they were going to turn on or walk back to the village, he ripped his own hat off the wall and he threw it over. And he looked at his buddy and he said, now I don't have a choice. I must scale the wall. And that right there is my job with my clients, is to help them throw their hat over the wall and then let's scale the wall and get to the other side where we know something is better. And it's hard work. There's accountability. There's a lot of work you have to put into it, but but the point of the hat is hire a Brian, take that job interview, quit that job you hate, whatever. That's the hat over the wall. Yeah. Right? That's the moment you just gotta, I'm just gonna do it. I don't know what it's gonna be on the other side, but I'm gonna do it. Yeah, and I look at it this way too, and I've had so many people, just about everybody, tell me you need to increase your hourly rate for coaching. I've been doing it for 29 years, but I also think of my children and my grandchildren. And I think of them and think, well, what if they needed help from someone and they just needed somebody to help them start, or somebody overcome the hump they're on, or help them to get off the hamster wheel. And they had to walk away because they just couldn't afford it. And I think about that a lot. And I think I don't want to turn people down. Obviously, I'm not going to work for free, but I like to be flexible when I can, because there are people out there who deserve that flexibility. Not with everybody.
Yeah. But you are very generous. Well, hey, you mentioned it, so I'm going to ask a little bit of a different question. Let's hear about your family. Give us a family update. You bring your family on. You've had your son on. I think you have, or you've either brought Ashley on, you're gonna do it. Mom's on deck, or so just give me an update. How's Jack doing? How's the family doing? Oh,
they're doing great. So I'll just kind of go down the list. I mean, Ashley and Chris have, Jack, my first grandchild, he'll be turning 4 here on the 26th of July. And now Ashley is pregnant with another son that will be born in October of this year. So that's fantastic news. We're all excited about that. Jack had his first T-ball game on Sunday, and it was funny watching the videos. Actually, I'm going to be seeing them all tomorrow. I'm going to be seeing Ashley, Dawson, and Jack tomorrow. We're going to my mother's tomorrow, to spend a night with her. Then Dawson he's going to his senior year at Northern Michigan University. He'll graduate in the spring of 26. He and Audrey live in a cool little house right across from Lake Superior, right on the beach. So they're doing really well. He's got a summer job kicking ass at construction, doing commercial construction for the summer, because that's his career. His major is business construction with I think a management minor. Adam and Elaine have Mila, who turns 3 this month, and they're expecting another little boy coming in September. Evan and Sandy moved from Lake Tahoe back to Michigan this year. They have Ollie, who turned 1 yesterday, and they're happily back in Grand Haven, Michigan. And then since I started the podcast, my youngest bonus son, Tyler and Kylie, they got married a couple of years ago. So now all 4 out of 5 are married, and 3 out of 5 have children. So I have 3 grandchildren and 2 coming. My mom's doing great. Looking forward to seeing her tomorrow. I'm leaving at 5 in the morning to go see her. She turns 90 here next weekend. So on the 18th or 16th. Oh gosh, I feel bad. Anyway, next week. And then of course, a lot of people don't know I moved from Michigan to Wisconsin. I met an amazing lady, Jackie, who lights up my life. And I moved here. She's got 2 children. Zach, who lives out in Denver. And then she's got Kinsey, who's married to Matt, and they have a little boy named Parker, who's just a few months old right now. So we get to see them quite a bit because Kinsey and Matt live like 10 minutes from Jackie in Wisconsin. So it's been a lot of fun. My personal life is really doing well.
What a full life, man! What an absolute full life. A couple questions on that. First off, I gotta share with you, Brian. You definitely are one of the world's greatest salesmen, because I've seen Jackie and I've heard about her and realized that you outsold yourself on that. And she probably doesn't realize it yet. So good job. Kudos to you. And anybody that's looking for better sales skills, get with Brian. He's got mad sales skills based on just meeting Jackie for sure.
Well, yeah. When you don't have looks, you have to be a really good salesman.
True.
Well, and funny how we met, Dave. We met on a dating app.
And, which is really bizarre.
I know, because I've never had success on dating apps. She's never had success on dating apps. But I usually when tell everybody how that happened. I think it's great. It's just, every time I would connect with somebody on a dating app, I'd say the same thing. Love your profile. Great to connect with you here. And I'd just go silent. And I'd wait for them to respond.
So good, Brian. That's so good. So good.
Well, when I saw Jackie's, because Jackie's put on her profile page or whatever it was, if you drive a motorcycle, have a long beard, or smoke cigarettes, please don't bother responding, or something like that. So I just wrote out there and said, hey, love your profile. I have an idea. Why don't I come over to Wisconsin? I'll pick up a motorcycle and we can go for a long ride while my long beard flows in the wind and a cigarette hanging from my mouth. And so I start off with a joke, and I'm not a naturally funny guy at all. I know that. But I thought, you know what do I have to lose? And then she said she looked at it and thought, then she got it. And then she responded, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you threw the hat over the wall. You just said, forget it. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm just going to go over here and take this shot at this. So
what I was doing before wasn't working. So I figured I just got to try something new. So I threw my hat over the wall.
So the first principle you were using is basic sales tactic, just a numbers game. Just put it out there, see what happens, which, by the way, if anybody's listening and using apps, probably not the best strategy. Second strategy worked really well. Something to learn there for everybody. So good job. And your mom is how old again?
She'll be 90 in a few days. Yeah.
And we've discussed this previously, but she's healthy, doing well.
She's doing great. Yeah, she still works in the summer. She works at a gift shop in my hometown. So she works 4 days a week, roughly, a few hours a day. And then when that shop closes down in the winter, she volunteers at a little place called the Hope Chest in my hometown, which is kind of a small version of like a Goodwill for the local community. She just volunteers her time there in the winter. And she and her best friend Opal still walk every day in the morning. I think at 9:00 they meet and walk around our block a couple of times. Yeah, she's doing great. I mean, she's a good testament to just living a good, healthy, quality life. My mom she has liked to read. Now she does more. She does a lot of word searches. I buy her word searches for Christmas. She loves to crochet, I think, or knit. I don't know. I think it's called crocheting, but that plus she just stays physically active. I mean, she's the prime example of how to live a good, long, quality life.
Yeah, I've got in the profession I'm in, financial services, I get a chance to sit across the table for people who are 30 and people who are 90, right? And I get to see the differences of how people live their lifestyle. And your mom embodies some of the principles that help get to 90 and still be active. Some people think, you wouldn't believe, Brian, some people will go, I don't want to live to 90. I don't want to live to 100. And I remind them, how would you like to live to 100 if you felt like you did when you were 50? Which is the embodiment of what your mom's doing, right? Keeping a social life, keeping friends, keeping engaged, having purpose, so working, keeping in mind, being physically active, which you said earlier. Let's start with the body all the time. Keeping mentally engaged, right? So there's a roadmap here. Not easy to do. Simple, not easy to do. But if you do them, you can live a healthy, long, and fulfilling life. So kudos to you and your mom, and I'm glad you get a chance to see her. And I think, isn't she going to be an upcoming guest for you?
Well, that's the thing. So, one of the questions people have asked me before is, what is my favorite podcast? And I do think it was back in January of 23. So 2.5 years ago, Dawson came on and we did a podcast called Anger is There to Help You, Not to Hurt You. Episode number 66. And it's so amazing to look at that. People from 4 different continents have heard my son at the time he was 21, or maybe he was 20, to hear his wisdom on that show. And I was, when we were doing it together, we were literally in a bedroom at a house, because in the one bedroom upstairs it had carpet on the floor, so it was better acoustics, with a tray table set up, and he and I were talking in the same microphone. And I had tears in my eyes just being there. So so the next step is I want to get my daughter on, and I want to get my mom on, because those two have an immense amount of wisdom to share. And but Ashley's busy. She's got a full job, full-time profession. She's raising a soon-to-be 4-year-old and pregnant with boy number 2. So when the dust settles, I'm going to get her on. But I also, like I said, get my mom on, because she's got a lot of stuff to share.
Oh, I'm sure. Make sure to pump her for some of the dirty little secrets about you too.
Yeah, no, those will be edited out.
So, well, that's awesome. Thanks for the update on everybody, Brian. Sounds like everybody's doing incredibly well, and that's awesome. So, back to your podcast. Really, if you're thinking about 3 years from now and your podcast, what would the conversation between you and I sound like 3 years from now regarding your podcast?
Well, number one, I've changed my mantra, or my thought process, my desire to be the biggest podcast in the world, because to me, that's a fleeting goal. And but what I would like to say, I would like this podcast to be the most impactful podcast in the world to the people who are subscribed to the podcast. Okay. So it may not be the biggest, but for those who are subscribed and listen consistently, I want it to be the most impactful podcast they listen to. And that makes it keeps it in my heart, my mind. It makes it more of a boutique podcast versus this grand. And I don't care if there's, 1 million subscribers or 50 million subscribers. Obviously, if I had the choice, I'd go with 50 million subscribers. But the idea is, for those who are subscribed, I want it to be their go-to show for hope and, nice. and ideas and wisdom and from the guests that come on.
So with that in mind, one of the things that I think that you try to remind people is to subscribe. That's number one.
Yes, for sure.
Smash the like button, right?
Smash, subscribe, 2. Rate and review.
Make comments, send you emails, let you know, because that's what you're really driving towards, what an impact. I think you're up to 10,000 heart letters.
Not quite 10. That was the original goal. We're not quite there yet.
Yeah, but you went to 100,000. You were like, I'm going to just blow that away.
Yeah, I know. So. Yeah. We were getting them a lot because I was reminding people to send them. In the last year or so, I was reading heart letters off at the beginning of the show. Hey, here's what we got. And I just had a listener, subscriber, I think last week or this week, reach out to me and ask me why I haven't read any out in a while. I thought I just kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you. So I'm going to get back to that.
It's working so well that you stopped doing it.
Nothing fails like success. But what we're going to do differently starting this year is I will be doing more. The podcast will be it'll be on YouTube. So we have a small YouTube following, but it's just audio. We're going to start doing these podcasts where myself and the guest are recorded. So it'll be a long-form format, long-form podcast on YouTube. So you can actually see me and see the guest.
Nice.
Yeah, that's going to be fun.
You and I have talked about that in the past. Well, let's uncover. This is the best part of this podcast, is what we're about to talk about next, in my opinion. I know you've covered some good stuff up to now, but Brian, I love this next question, man. What are you doing to take this thing to the next level?
The podcast itself, or the whole
No, your whole
Oh.
the bamboo lab, like if the podcast is one component, but you can I just share with your listeners what's happened over the last few weeks here
I hope
with
so.
us? So
I hope you can tell me.
I hope so. Yeah, me too.
I don't know what you're going to say. So
you've shared with me, Brian, that you just felt stuck. You didn't really know where everything was going, and you and I started brainstorming. And one of the things that you and I have discussed is, how do we bring this to more people? How can you take your platform? So just podcast being one element, but how do you take this and actually help more people? And you had Robert Hall on last week or week before, and really discussing the new world.
Yeah.
How we engage with, how we consume information, how we buy products, how we watch news, everything. The world today is different. We know this from 10 or 20 years ago, but sometimes a lot of us are stuck. And this is a message for listeners too. We're stuck in using analog technology in a digital world, meaning we're doing things we did 10, 20 years ago and hoping that they're more successful or as successful. And the most dangerous thing or the hardest thing for somebody to do, if you've been successful, I was listening to somebody called a futurist. I forget his name. The futurist studies. They study 8 to 12-year-olds and how they consume, what they're purchasing, what they do, how they make decisions, because that tells them 10 to 20 years in the future what products, how do companies survive, okay, and how do they change and adapt. And one of the things that he shared was, being successful in the future. We were at a conference where it was the top 1% of the company was invited, right? So the top 1% producers were there. And he said, I'm most afraid for success for the people in this room. And he said, I'm most afraid for success because you've been successful. What you've done has given you success to get to here. And you have to abandon that if you're going to be successful in the future and do something completely different. And it's really hard when you've been successful to abandon that, to do something completely different. Because you can sit back and go, why would I do something different? This has gotten me to a level of success.
Yeah.
Right? It's worked.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to we can go through stories, Kodak and, other companies that, a Blockbuster or whatever. And you can say, well, those are just follies. But the problem is they were successful. Why would you rip up your business plan if it got you success? Because the future looks completely different. And then you get Amazon. Sears is no longer. Sears is the original. Yeah. Amazon. If you think about it, right? Yeah. They just didn't adapt. And so, anyways, that's a long-winded way of saying you have some things that you want to do to bring more, to make more of an impact in the world and to make it more accessible to people. So you want to brainstorm for a little bit with your audience and just see where this goes?
Yeah. And yeah, thanks for asking that question, because really my whole purpose in the 29 years of doing this so far has been to impact and empower people. And if you look at the two things that we currently do, or I currently do, you have coaching, which has been obviously the mainstay and the foundation for 29 years. And then you have the podcast. The coaching, the private coaching is very, very intimate. Like, I know my clients, they know me. We get into some really deep stuff at times, and, crying. There's been tears shed. There's been, there's been people yelling. Sometimes we have to get down and dirty and really get them to that next level. So I get to know my clients in a very intimate level. Then you have the podcast, which is the other extreme where it's not intimate. I don't know obviously the vast majority of the listeners out there. I'm trying to get to know what they want and what they need from me so I can provide that. But it's not intimate. So there's a middle ground, and there's that chasm right there of, I don't have a middle ground way to impact and empower people around the world. So the thing we're working on, you and I have obviously been talking about this, is kind of going into a third chapter of the Bamboo Lab. You got the coaching, you got the podcast. Now, somewhere in the middle where I'll start doing more short-term private or videos for subscribers, like a short form weekly, potentially, where you will subscribe and you will actually get you'll hear me talking directly to you in that subscription room. So it'll be small. It may be short, I should say, short form, but it'll give you topics and give you more specific advice than we can give on the podcast. Not quite as intimate as the coaching, however. And then the other one that I'm really excited about is what in my mind right now, I'm calling the Bamboo Mug Club. I don't know if that's the name we're going to stick with or not, but where I will bring on, it'll be a private podcast that you will subscribe to and pay a nominal fee every month, where you will actually join live through Zoom or Microsoft Teams, and you will see me on video live with a guest. And that guest will be somebody who's successful in a certain niche or has a certain a specialty. You know, they're a subject matter expert somewhere, and that person and I will go back and forth and discuss that issue, that topic, give those words and pearls of wisdom and advice and counsel to the subscribers on this Mug Club concept. And it'll be live so people can actually text in and type in and ask questions. And so one of the things I'm doing now with that is I'm reaching out to people, and I'm going to reach out to the audience right now, are there certain topics that it would be important for you so I can find the right guest? This is something that's going to take a while to develop. I'd like to get something. I'm going to pilot it later this summer and then open it up to more subscribers later probably in mid fall is my hope. And don't hold me to that, because I don't know all that's going to take to get that going, but that's my goal right now. But are there topics that you'd like to see so that I can formulate guests that could come on and deal with those topics because that's their specialty? Or do you know of a guest, or are you someone who, hey, I'm an expert on this, Brian, I think this is a great topic. Feel free to email me, brian@bamboolab3.com, and say, hey, I think it's a great idea. I think it's a crappy idea. I think it's a great idea. Here's some topics I think I would really be interested in. Or, hey, I've got a person I think would be a great guest, or I would like to become a guest because this is my subject matter expertise. So those two are that's going to separate that intimate, high-end coaching, private coaching, and the not as intimate podcast. It's going to come somewhere in the middle, for people who so I can still impact and empower people, but on a more intimate level than the podcast, but not quite as intimate and as deep as private coaching.
Well, I'm excited, Brian, because there is a lot of people who want coaching and coaching on demand. Let's just call it coaching on demand, right? Like that they could access you and your pearls, and the same thing you would lead an intimate coaching session with, except without maybe the feedback piece of it, right? Which is, or the personal guided piece. And that's that short clip, maybe it's a 15 to 20 minute, hey, here's a topic. Here's the concept. Here's what you can do. Here's your end product, and then be able to walk through pieces of the coaching that you've helped other people with, and they could access that and be able to get their coaching to whatever they could get out of that.
Yeah.
And then the second piece that you talked about is really, and I really like this because I think most of your listeners are wanting to know, one, how to be better physically, how to be better emotionally, how to be better mentally, how to be better professionally, right? How to do more with what they're currently working on. And they're taking that holistic approach and could come to one place where you have a myriad of guests that you can actually, and then they can interact with that. One of the things you and I talk about is for those groups, like having a live Q&A. So I'm here, I'm hosting, but you can, send questions in, and I'll get those, to the best of your ability in the time period allotted, get to the questions that seem most pertinent or the ones that most people are asking, and be able to even have them in advance or live at that point in time. So I'm excited. Those two formats are a lot of work, not easy to do, but I think it's going to be very impactful and really take everything to the next level. And the other one that you and I've talked about, and I didn't hear you mention, is really starting and thinking about the groups of people that you have in the universe, kind of banding them together. It's what I'm excited about, to have other people that you can host, so to speak, in a mastermind. I'm just using the word mastermind. You're thinking of other terms for it. but getting in a group of people who are committed to each other, where you're fostering that relationship and they're setting goals and they're being brutal, that brutal honesty that you had last fall, that group that you could reach out to, you're fostering that for the people that I don't say you care the most about, but the people who care the most about themselves to say, like, I want a team of people that are on the same playing field as me. Maybe I'm an entrepreneur or a solo practitioner. I'm doing something. I'm kind of by myself, and I don't really have a group of people to hold me accountable that I can go to.
Yeah.
And you're looking to foster that. I'm excited about that too, because I think you're going to get. I think you're going to get a lot of people that are listening to this one and say, I want that. At least that's my instinct. And if it's not, I'll selfishly tell you, I want to be in it. So sign me up.
You're going to be a guest too. Well, that's the thing. I was talking to a client this morning from North Carolina, one of my favorite clients. And it's like many people, very successful. I mean, financially successful, professionally successful, personally becoming more successful, and kind of finding out that he's outgrowing his current circle. And so the idea is you don't outgrow a circle of people until you find your next group of people. And so this particular client had asked me like 2 weeks ago at the same time, what would you say, Brian, is the number one impetus to success? And I said, it's who you marry and who you associate with. Every time it's who you associate with, your partner in life, to your friends, to your, even your clients. And because that's who you get, that's who feeds you. And so, and I can prove that quantifiably because I've tracked that in my own personal life. And so, but a lot of people don't have that. They don't have that, that circle within their, let's say, their geographical community. If you're in a small town or a big city, but you have a group of friends and you don't want to get rid of your friends, but you do want to start putting other people in there who are at the level you want to go to. And what I shared with him today is I said, you can't necessarily do that in your town. You might be able to, but you don't have to. You can have a best friend who challenges you, you challenge him, you love and respect each other, who might live across the country. And I used you, Dave, as an example. 18 years of this relationship and this friendship, we live thousands of miles apart from each other. But we talk every week. We text back and forth every day. We are there for each other. We challenge each other. And that you have been a major impetus to my growth, despite we don't go out for beers. We don't bowl together or play softball together in the summertime. So it's like,
I know, just a couple weeks ago, you and I went on a teams meeting and you said, I forgot how ugly you were. And I was like, I was offended by that.
That's right. Yeah. We just started doing Teams calls. But that's the thing. I want to bring those people together and create a community for people who are like-minded, successful-minded, performance-minded, who want to take care of their body, their mind, their finances, their career, their soul, whatever it might be, who just want to improve, who want to throw their hat over the wall. That's really what it is.
Yeah. Two things I'd comment on that. The first one I'd say is to the last thing you just said a second ago. If you've been successful, and I'm speaking to people, and this will resonate to the ones this impacts. You get to a point where, and I hate to say this, but it's true, the group of friends and associates you have will outcast you or pull you back. And there's no maliciousness about it. It's literally you're becoming something different than the group that you were with. That's just, if you're going to be successful, that's going to happen. Yeah. It doesn't matter what level that you're at. When you get that next level, it'll happen again and again. That's just part of the process of being uberly successful. Who's in the sphere with people like, and I could name people. Some of them are political hot rods right now, but lightning rods right now. But you get into a smaller and smaller stratosphere. So part of your process is, okay, let me build that. Let's get rid of geography. Let's get rid of who you know. And let's reshuffle the deck and let me put you in a group where you can get that challenge and get some like-mindedness.
Well, one of the things, if I can say real quickly, is there was a term called junto. I think it's JUNTO that the founding fathers, at least it was Ben Franklin, I know, used to do this when they would get together and just, discuss the future of our nation, the forming of our nation. They would get together at a pub and they would drink beer and they would just discuss it. Like it was more informal. It wasn't a congressional meeting. It wasn't, it was just them getting down and talking about what might work, what won't work, what they're struggling with, what their challenges are, what opportunities and successes they're experiencing. And I just love that idea. And I did it on I did it on a very small level, face to face when I lived in Grand Rapids, maybe 20 years ago, 25, 22 years ago, with a small group of people for a while. It just kind of disbanded. I was going through a divorce and I was starting to raise my Dawson on my own. But we at least had the seeds of the idea back then. And then you kind of propagated that seed again, rewatered it over the last few weeks as we've been talking about this. And it's got me excited I see it as the antidote for what a lot of people need out there.
Yeah, and they will run a life cycle. You're going to run a life cycle with that group too, right? The secret wisdom is, in the format I think that you're trying to create is, okay, when you run this life cycle, this group has run this life cycle, do I need to put you in another group, or have you fallen to the side?
Right, yeah.
People are going to rise to the level of complexity, right? Peter Principle is still at work. So maybe you don't go to the next level. But there's no shame in that. Ed Milet said, we had a guest on one time that said, if you're happy with the way things are right now, you've achieved success. It's those people that are unhappy with the way things are that are still searching. That darkness, that thing they're afraid of, that impostor syndrome for some, or the fear of failure, fear of success, or that darkness that keeps creeping up on them, that keeps driving them to the next level. Those people, right, are going to. They're still hungry. They have that emptiness of, I haven't achieved yet.
Yeah.
But if you're happy and you like your life and you're content, and high five yourself.
Yeah.
You've achieved what everybody else that's on the journey is searching for. Don't belittle that. No, there's no shame in that. It's acknowledge that and be happy with that.
The only thing I'd add to that, and I agree with you, is that don't confuse happiness with contentment, because a lot of people are content in life, but are they really happy? Because I really don't. When you look at what makes people happy, there are three things. It's 50% of your happiness is genetic. It's determined by your parents and grandparents, and you can't do anything about it. It's your DNA. 10% of your happiness is all the stuff you have: money, cars, home, good looks, popularity, income. All that together makes up 10%. And you have influence over that, but you don't have control, because it can all be taken away at any given time. But one thing there's 40% left of your happiness, which is called intentional activities. And that's the one area you control. It's the only one of the three you can control, but it's a full 40% of your happiness. And that is intentionally doing things that challenge yourself. Practicing voluntary adversity, doing things that push you out of your comfort zone, meeting new people, trying new things, experimenting in life. When you do that with the intention that you want to become a better person for yourself and others, that's where your happiness comes from. It's like you sit and watch Netflix, and eat, drink beer and eat candy all night. You're content. But I'll guarantee you're not happy doing that. But if you got up and went for a 2-mile run or a 5-mile run or a walk around the block,
you're not going to be content, but you'll be happy.
But you'll be happy, exactly. And that happiness lasts forever. It hits you right away. You feel good, but there is a sense that the rest of your life, subconsciously, you use that time frame of your life to do something positive and productive versus something that's, just bleh. Watching Netflix. Yeah. I'm not saying you shouldn't watch Netflix and eat candy and drink beer. I'm just saying, if that's an example of contentment versus happiness.
Yeah, no, good separator there. I give you listeners three things. This is, Brian, I think you'll agree with this, because you hit on this a second ago. Some of the most important decisions is who you marry, who you hang out with, right?
Yeah.
I had somebody give me a piece of insight one time to pass this along. And I think it's the fifth time I pass it along, so I don't have to say who it was. Scott Lockney, but
I know Scott.
Yeah, I can tell you everything about you, and I can tell you where you're going to be in 5 years if I get 3 pieces of information about you. The 3 pieces of information, I can tell you everything about you and where you're going to be 5 years from now. If you show me your checkbook, your check register, so what you spend your money on. If I can see your calendar, what you spend your time on, and I know the 5 people you spend the most time with, if I have those 3 pieces of information, I can tell you everything about you, and I can tell you where you're going to be in 5 years.
Scott's a wise man, and that's a great piece of information.
So I'm challenging your listeners as you think about Brian expanding what's coming up and whether you want to participate. Take a look at what you spend your money on today. How are you investing it in you? More specifically, are you just spending it or is it an investment? Number two, what's going on? How are you investing your time? Are you learning something? Are you challenging yourself? If you look at your calendar, one of the first things you do, or you did with me, was you took a time audit, and every 15 minutes I had to tell you what I was doing. And I turned that into you after 2 weeks. And you just said, okay, here's where you can improve, and here's where you're doing really well. So what are you spending your time on? And then write down not just who you think your closest friend is, who your closest friends are, but who do you spend the most time with?
Right.
And that's why who you marry is important, because that person's in your ear every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Or they should be, right? So that's why that decision, like you said a second ago, is the most important, one of the most important ones, because that person has your ear. They're going to affect how you think and your day-to-day activity, your emotions. So that's a challenge and then if you're missing of the 5 friends that you want to spend time with, well, raise your hand with Brian. Send an email and say, hey, how do I become part of this? Send an email to Brian at Bamboo Lab 3. Correct, Brian?
Yep, that's it. Yeah.
The number 3, not the word 3. .com. And Brian, traditional spelling, at Bamboo Lab 3, the number 3.com.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to be part of this. I can be a speaker. I would love it if you could get this person on as a speaker. I've read their book, or I know other people like that, or I know this person in this industry. He hasn't been as famous as somebody else, but he's super knowledgeable. Hey, send all that to Brian. I want to deluge Brian with enough information that he can start to get really good material and elevate this. And it's one of the times that we get to have our fingerprint on the future. We get to craft what we're a part of, and you're inviting people to do that.
Yeah. And that's the exciting thing about this new journey is, it's good you look at, again, I've quoted the hero's journey from Joseph Conrad already today, but you get to a point in life, if you're traveling down the path of this, you're facing resistance and you're going on a call to adventure, you get to a point where there's a death and a rebirth. And a lot of people are so afraid of that moment where they have to change, something completely changes in them and the way they do things and the way they think or feel or act or the thing, their behavior. But it's a very terrifying time. It's a very exciting time. And for me to be in that place where I had to kind of kill my old thoughts to some degree of how I did this, to now be reborn again with a new concept, a new way of approaching and impacting and empowering people. And those first few people who come aboard are going to they're helping create it. I mean,
yeah.
So it's going to be a lot
We'll
of fun.
never be as smart. We'll never be as smart as all the people we surround ourselves with.
No.
So it's
and that's a cool thing because, I do this thing called CLR. I've been doing it for years. It's a conscious living reminder, Dave. And I track 33 things that I need to do every week. Starting off with how many times I contact my mother, 7 times a week. My kids, 7 times a week. Jackie, 7 times a week. Reach out to 12 friends every week. Good quality friends. How much protein, how much water, how much times I lift and extra, all this stuff that I track. It's 33 different things. And I line chart it. Bar chart it? Bar chart. Bar chart. And so I can look and say, okay, when did I have good months where I did most of these things? I never get 33. I think I've gotten it one time, but I get between 29 and 31 now. But I was looking in my past, I was doing 12 to 16, 18. On a good week, I might get 20 out of 33. Literally, the month I met Jackie, literally, you can see it. It went up. February, March, April, May, June, now July are all my best months ever of getting these other things done. Because when you surround yourself with positivity and you surround yourself with people who love, understand, respect, and appreciate you and who will challenge you, who will celebrate with you, who will challenge you, who will support you, that is the impetus to everything else. And so it is, so I can I'm going to do this longer, but, and put together a great sampling of data, but I can, in my life anyway, I can literally quantify the differences. And that's just with your romantic partner. You could do the same thing when you meet new friends and say, did that change my living and style or my improvements and enhancements, so to speak? So 100% true.
Awesome, Brian. Well, I have just a couple more questions for you, sir. And I think I already know the answer to the next one. What's the one thing that if you knew you couldn't fail, would you start today?
Well, it's the thing I've already started. It's my book. It is. I will say this. It's the book, and it's doing video podcasts and putting videos out in any form. I've always avoided Microsoft Teams or Zoom calls with clients. I just started doing that in the last month. I love it. Now we're going to be doing these videos for the podcast and doing live sessions with this mug club concept. I'll be shooting private videos for subscriptions for people to sign up and watch me. They'll be provided with a short form video on some success or performance topic. So those are there, and those we're tackling now. But the book is it. I mean, I have been writing this book for 15 years. It's gone through phases. There's something about sitting down at my computer and creating more content and putting this all together that I just get lost in. And so that is it. And so that's another impetus for the next 6 months of this year is to really get tackling on the book. So when I get back to my mother's, it'll be part of my daily routine that I sit down. I don't care if I just stare at my computer for a set amount of time, because I know that will bore me, but there's a set time where all distractions will be off, and the only thing that will be on my mind will be the book. And I'll start typing, and I'll start creating, and I'll start taking notes, and I'll start coming up with ideas. So, but that's it. It's finish the book. Get it published.
I know you've been working on the book, and I know that this shoot straight with you, Brian, it'll never be perfect. So you just got to publish it, man. And I know you know that too. Yeah. So that's been one of the barriers. We kind of discussed that. Well, what's next for you, sir?
It's the book and this next stage of connecting the podcast with the coaching session and kind of have what am I trying to say? A mongrel version of the two together by doing the club, the private club where we get a bunch of men and women together, as well as the private video, the subscription videos. Those are the three next big things for me, because I look at. Go ahead. Can
people sign up with a way to say, hey, when you get this launched, I want to be part of the first peak? You have a tracking mechanism for that, or? I mean, just have to email me, and I'll keep account of everybody and their contact information. Okay. So yeah, so if you email me and let me know for either one of those, or for both of those, we'll call it the Mug Club for now until a better name comes up, if it does, where you are together with a bunch of like-minded people live once a month, probably, we're thinking. If you're interested in that, or, hey, I want to subscribe to this deal where you're giving short form videos out only for subscribers, and it's a very condensed, very version of my coaching and podcast together, okay. Like just content. Like here's a thing I learned today. Here's something that I'm hearing from my subscribers. They want to learn about this. Let's dig into it. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. I mean, and we'll put together a spreadsheet of potential people who are interested, and then when the time it goes to becoming launched, we'll let people know. Here, we're going live in 3 weeks or whatever. Awesome. And what question, Brian, did I not ask that I should have asked today?
I think the one thing because I get this question a lot, is that what have I learned over these first 149 episodes? What have I learned that I didn't know prior to doing the podcast? And there's I say the same things every time. I tell everybody the same thing. Number one is how close we all are to other truly amazing people who want to connect, who want to share their story, want to share their wisdom. And we're right there. We are literally, I'm shocked that when I watched Oprah, I would see this gentleman on Oprah 8 or 9 times as an subject matter expert. And he's also a counselor and coach to celebrities in Hollywood. And yet I can text him and he will text back with information or advice for me. That boggles my mind. That's one connection away, and we're all that. And also the second thing I learned was how amazing everybody truly is, not just the guests, because, sometimes I've just kind of randomly asked for people to come on the podcast. And I hate to admit that, but I'll go through Facebook sometimes. Hey, that person looks interesting. Come on the show. And, I'll vet them through a pre-interview, but the instinct it's not even instinct. It's just the fact that every person, every listener right now has an amazing story. They have amazing wisdom to share. They're all on that journey of life and with that, they have just amazing gift to offer other people. And then the third thing I learned is what we already talked about is that, you can't take success personally. And because when things are, you're doing something, you can't get too caught up in it. You have to surround yourself with people who will humble you, will keep you, challenge you, will support you and celebrate with you, but will challenge you to stay true to who you are. And then you kind of separate yourself. The podcast is not Brian. The podcast is the podcast. And that kind of, I'm deeply connected to it. I'm deeply imprinted on it, and it's imprinted on me. But the success or failure, the one thing I've learned is don't read comments. So if somebody reaches out to me on social media, I don't read the comments. I'm sure I'm missing opportunities to coach people or speak for organizations, but I don't read comments. Because I don't, if you email me directly, I'm going to listen, I'm going to read it. But because I don't want to hear the great stuff, but I don't want to hear the negative either, because I don't want that to change my perception of, because there's a lot of crackpots out there, and there's a lot of bots out there, and I'm not interested in that. Well,
I think other people who do podcasts or other people are in a space where they can get that live feedback. I've mentioned the same thing. Like, there's 10 positives and you get the one negative, and that's the one you're focused on.
Yeah.
So what's the point in that, right?
And people if you come with a constructive criticism, say, "Hey, I love the show, but I don't like I'm perfectly fine with that. In fact, I want that. But if somebody's, and that's a person who's going to reach out to me directly. Everybody has my email, so it's not like it's public, it's private information. But if somebody's just commenting on a post after the podcast is put up or something, I'm sorry, but I'm not reading it.
Well, and I'm going to wrap up with a lesson that you embody, really, and just to share. Napoleon Hill had a process where he would read biographies or read about other famous people, and then he would pose a question to these, like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or Socrates, and have dialogues in his mind with these people and solve problems with them. And just as it's fascinating to think about having the wisdom of some of the greatest minds in history, because you studied them, you read. You're a big prolific reader, but you've also embodied that with your dad. And your dad, although left when you were a young man, has shaped your life, has still had a huge impact on you. And if you would mind, as we wrap this up, just sharing that after college, you were embarking on your career, and you stopped by your dad's grave and you made a promise to him. What was that promise, Brian?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, I've had two people who have impacted my life, and obviously, not coincidentally, they're both my parents. My mother, who has shaped me and raised me for the past 58 years and is still raising and shaping me to this day. Yes. And my dad did it more he did a lot in 4.5 years with me. And you're correct, but it wasn't actually it was actually 2 weeks before I was going to college. So I was 18 years old. Oh. And gotcha. I drove down with my pickup truck. I remember I had a blue F-150 pickup truck, beat up, and the passenger door didn't even shut, so I had to have a bungee shut. I had to have a bungee cord.
Who didn't have that car? Who didn't have that truck?
And it was so the hubcaps were so rusty, I just painted them white. And I stopped down, and I remember standing at his gravesite, And it was a sunny day. And my dad has a really nice plot where it looks over Lake Michigan, or it looks over Lake Huron, I'm sorry. And the Mackinac Bridge is right there. So it's a very scenic plot. And I was sitting and I was starting to cry. Now, I know I was not crying because I missed my dad. It had been 14 years, 13 and a half years actually or so since he had passed away at this time. But I was crying. I was moving away for the first time, away from my mother, my family, my friends, my hometown, the only home I'd ever lived in. I was going to college, and I remember verbatim what I said. I said, between my tears, I said, Dad, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life, but I promise you, I will change the world. And I said that, and I don't even know where that came from, Dave. It just came. And I just walked away, and that was it. I never really thought about it until after college, and then I went on to went into management at American Express. And I remember walking down the hall one time behind, I think I had 29 or 30 advisors, financial advisors that I was in charge of in my office. I was 27, 26 years old. And there were 2 or 3 of them walking ahead of me. They didn't know I was behind them. And another advisor who was not in my group, was an older senior advisor, met them in the hallway as they passed. And he said, what's going on, folks? And they all said in unison, changing the course of the world. And it hit me that I was actually teaching them, not even connecting that back to the commitment I made to my father, 20 years prior. But I was, or not 20 years, 7, 8 years, 6 years prior, whatever it was. I wasn't even connecting, but that was what I was teaching. And we were using that slogan, we're changing the course of the world. That was our motto for our group. And so that was a commitment that has stuck with me ever since. Once I realized, 6 years later, when I was telling people this, I better go do it. And so that's been a major focus of mine.
Well, and you transcend to it, just part of your DNA now. And so I can imagine that your dad in heaven is saying to him, to you, and to everybody, one, he's very proud. And number two, you kept the promise, Brian, and you're going to continue to keep that promise. So I thank you for everything you do in behalf of the Bamboo Club and gaggle, whatever they call it, the bamboo stuff. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for the hard work. Thanks for taking the challenge of taking the podcast out and now taking this to the next level. You're changing the world. You're shaping lives. You make yourself available. You're a good human being. I just want to personally thank you for being awesome, man. Yeah. So with that, on behalf of everybody here, thank you, sir.
I appreciate that. And you're more than welcome. It's been an honor. And I want to thank you, Dave. Obviously, you're my podfather. This was your idea. And thank you for our friendship over the last 18, 19 years. You have no idea. I know you know how much I love you because I say it all the time.
Thanks, brother. Love you too.
I also want to thank my family. I want to thank my kids, my grandkids, my mom, my friends, my clients. I mean, I have the best clients in the world. I really do. I love them dearly. I had an opportunity this week to actually look at a client doing a Zoom call or Microsoft Teams call. I said, look at me, look at my eyes. And he looked at me and I said, I love you. And he looked at me kind of for a second, surprised, and he said, I love you too. I said, I wanted you to know that. I really do. And I thank you to all the guests out there that have come on this show. My gosh, what a group of amazing people. I mean, and all the listeners. I mean, this is, without you guys, there's nothing. And then I also want to I'm going to thank people in advance for those who come on the next level of our show with the Mug Club and the videos for those guests who come on there and the subscribers who join. Thank you in advance, because this has been a fun ride over the past 29 years, and I'm looking forward to the next 29 years.
Awesome.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, brother. And thank you, everybody. See you all next week.